Hello and welcome to the Fit and Free podcast. This is a podcast for women who want it all, to feel strong and confident in their bodies, as well as enjoying a sneaky mug on a Friday night. I'm an exercise physiologist and sports nutritionist, here to teach you how to achieve your body goals without food and your body controlling your life. So let's jump in. Hello you guys and welcome back to another ep of the Fit and Free Potty. Today I've got another special guest episode and I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. I have Sigi, who is a health and mindset coach. She's a seasoned eating psychology practitioner and has been a qualified health and fitness coach since 2014. She has a wealth of knowledge and she specialises especially in the body image and mindset space. So today we're bringing you a beautiful conversation in and around body image, how to improve your body image, what to do when you're stuck in a comparison loop, when you're stuck in the negative self-talk spiral, and practical things that you can do with your nutrition, exercise, and mindset starting today to break free from all of these vicious cycles. So let's jump into the episode. So Sigi, thank you so much for coming onto the Fit and Free podcast. I'm so grateful that you're here and talking about all these amazing things in terms of body image, health, fueling our bodies correctly and all the things. So I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to becoming a health, nutrition, exercise, body image, and mindset coach.
All of the things.
All of the things.
I want to first of all say thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited about today's conversation, and I know a lot of your audience will get many valuable insights around this. And I know I can already sense this conversation is going to lead to like all different ways of talking about, body image, exercise, and nutrition. So it's going to be fun. Where I started was, let's go 2 decades back, 2000 and let's say 4, finishing high school, getting into uni, working part-time. I had a really negative relationship with food, which also stemmed from like my upbringing. I was looking up to my guardians who, cherishing the naughty foods in quotations as like treats or, something that you should earn to eat. And that type of mindset I had just steered me into my teenage years, into my early 20s, where it really affected me negatively. And obviously that connection with food also affected that connection with my body as well. Yeah. So prior to getting into the health and fitness industry, I was just your average girl working 9 to 5, sometimes, doing bartending work during the weekends, which was fun. However, that also led to a really poor relationship with food, drink, substances. You may relate to this, where like back in the 20s, I was like a wild child.
Party animal. Regret
it. It was fun. You have to go through those experiences to learn what you love and enjoy doing right now, which during that time led me to learning more about health and fitness. And I came across this sales role at a personal training academy. And during my time working there, I was able to take on my certificate 3 and 4 in fitness, which then ended up me into like this really cool spiral of wanting to learn more about health and fitness. And it just led me to wanting to work more on myself as well, which led me to understanding more about my body, about training, about strength, about all of the stuff, which then led me to body composition, bodybuilding, competing. And with someone who had already a negative relationship with food, you can just imagine it just led into a really dark black rabbit hole, which was not ideal. And during that time, I didn't have that self-awareness of where I was taking myself to, which ended up in cycles of binge eating, emotional eating, like your typical yo-yo dieting relationship. Yeah. And it wasn't until I hired my first coach and he highlighted my habits over the weekends, during the week. He's like, are you noticing there's like a pattern happening here? And when someone's mirroring you something that's uncomfortable, it can be quite triggering. And you're like, oh no, like, what do you mean? I have nothing wrong over here. I'm totally fine.
Ego can't handle that.
100%, you want to be right the whole time, which thankfully to him, it led me to learning a little bit more about myself, having a better understanding. Okay, if I have a really poor relationship with food and I'm trying to teach my clients to have a healthy relationship with food themselves, it's very like hypocritical right there. You
Yeah.
know, I'm trying to be this role model, but realistically, I'm not being authentic. I'm hiding in the shadows and trying for them to become their best selves. So there was like a massive clash there.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't till after bodybuilding, competing, and then taking further studies within the mindset, within the psychology of eating, then
Yeah.
to have that understanding, this is the gap that's been happening in the fitness and health industry. You know, we're
Yeah.
so heavily on training and tracking macros and getting us
Yeah.
steps, which is an awesome way to start. But
Yeah.
then you hit this wall and you're like, okay, well, what else? Why can't I achieve my goals furthermore? What's
Yeah.
blocking me? And usually it's the mindset.
Yeah.
So diving into the mindset side of things has just opened this beautiful can of worms, not in a negative way, but in a really cool way to understand myself better, but also to be able to serve my clients better as well. So yeah, 20 years moving forward, here I am, a mindset and body image coach.
What an amazing story. And there's so many parts of that I just want to speak to. Like, you're so right in terms of like living your life, and then like, you know, you have these behaviors and you don't quote unquote know that they're, you know, unhealthy and holding you back. Like when someone reflects that to you and mirrors that to you, you're like, holy shit, like I did not want to hear that. And that can be really hard and that can be so confronting. So I love it how you've pulled in the importance of mindset, because I personally have that exact same belief and that missing piece that not many people are talking about, in the importance of having a healthy relationship with food and having a healthy relationship with your body, because at the end of the day, like that's the thing that's driving how we're choosing our nutrition and how we're choosing our exercise. So the way that you've just pulled that into a beautiful story is like, yes, like I fucking love that, because I totally agree.
It's so true. And I'm glad like we've opened this conversation around this because as I mentioned, like when we are able to bridge the gap between your mindset and
Yeah.
your nutrition and your training and your menstrual health and
Yeah.
whatever other goals you have in mind, you can have a better understanding of your habits, of
Yeah.
your daily behaviors, and like, is it holding you back? Is it serving you? And as you mentioned, we have the tendency of not wanting to look within because it's
Mhm.
uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
how many times have you come across a client where they're like, I want to lose 5 kilos, but you're just like, babe, but you're not doing the bare minimum right now. Hence, like, this is like, or she has the all or nothing mindset, you know,
Mentality. Yeah.
diet strictly Monday to Friday, but then the weekend comes, you're like, oh, I'm just going to have 5 drinks because I deserve it.
Yes. I'm just going to eat this chocolate because I'll have this ice cream because I deserve it.
Exactly. So, and you know, I've fallen into that trap, and I'm sure by the sounds of things, like you've experienced this yourself, where you're stuck in this trap of all or nothing, that
Yeah.
perfectionism
The
when it comes to
perfectionism.
food. Like, God, oh my God, the amount of times I used to spend on a Sunday afternoon trying to perfect my meal prep for
Yeah.
Monday, I used to obsess about it so much that by the time Monday comes for me to eat my meal prep food, I wouldn't even want it because I'm like, I can't be bothered. It's
Mhm.
draining.
You literally. And like, I think it's such a powerful conversation as well, is because, you know, people have such a, like, it creates such a negative relationship then with food and exercise. And like, you know, it turns into more of a punishment. And I think there's a big conversation in and around shame as well that can tie really nicely into that. Because like when we have those perfectionism tendencies and we have that all or nothing mentality, then we're like, well, why am I like, why do I keep doing this? Like, why am I so shit? Like, why can't I be successful? And it's just this roller coaster of emotions of us making us feel like we're a complete failure and that we're worthless because we can't follow through and stick to anything. And then that in itself is just creating, you know, so much like negative feelings in people's lives, when nutrition and exercise is meant to make us feel good. It's meant to make ourselves feel nourished and empowered and all the things. So it's such a thing.
I completely agree with that. And that is the perfect understanding for people to realize that when you're getting stuck in that mentality, that negative mentality, that's like a fixed way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's like back for what I said before and what you've mentioned, it's like all or nothing mindset or that victim mindset going, well,
Mm.
everyone else is achieving their goals. Why am I not achieving my goals? What's wrong with
Mm.
me? Why can't I do this? And that stems, it could stem from like, again, previous habits, issues around body image. It could be, as I mentioned, like that all or nothing thinking, which is so common,
So
and it's
common.
teaching clients to step out of that way of thinking and looking at, your training as a factor, as you mentioned, to like love doing it, not just doing it to look a certain way, because again, that can come from insecurity, low self-esteem, the unworthiness piece.
Absolutely. And that kind of transitions us into my next beautiful question for you is, why do you think so many women experience bad body image, and how does it affect people's way of eating and exercise choices?
I love talking about this so much because, again, like with my experience and like with my specialty, body image is such a big concept for women that it's too often not spoken properly enough about, because
Mm-hmm.
people think, oh, it's just body image and then nutrition is separate and then the training separate and like my business is separate and my life. But we need to understand that people who have a negative body image or see their bodies in like unrealistic ways, it's not their fault. It's like this distorted perception
Yeah.
of specific body parts where they're not happy about, whether it's overall size, shape, and common negative body image feelings can include someone feeling ashamed or anxious or guilty about how they look, or believing they're not beautiful enough, not skinny enough, not fit enough. Again, it goes back to like that fixed way of thinking.
Thinking.
Exactly. And that makes them feel physically uncomfortable and awkward. And it takes me back to that first time when I stepped into the gym, feeling so awkward, so
Oh,
uncomfortable, because I had no idea what I was doing. And I
yeah.
wanted to go to the weight training session, the weight training room, but all I saw was big, buff men. There were no women. Well, now we're transitioning differently, which is really cool. So with the negative body image side of things, the challenges, they come from our influenced by our own habits, upbringing. It's not influenced by our own
Yeah.
beliefs. You don't get born into the world and start thinking you're not
I
good
hate
enough.
myself. Mm.
Yeah, exactly. It comes from society, friends, family. Like guardians is probably like the most common one. Like if
Yeah.
you used to see your parents speak negatively about them, guess what? You're going to start speaking negatively about you because you think that's the truth. You don't know the difference between right or wrong at a really young age. So that's how it's like transmitted and reinforced in your mind already. And it's actually like, I'm pretty sure like if the stats haven't changed, like 42% of girls from the grade of 1 to 3rd grade are already thinking about wanting to lose weight.
It's so upsetting, isn't it?
And then by the time like you're in middle school,
Yeah.
between like 50 to 70% of girls already like are not satisfied with
Yeah.
certain body parts of themselves. And again, like, why are we affected? As I mentioned, it's culturally,
Children.
socially.
Yeah.
Now that we're so stepped into the social media
Yeah.
world, again, that has wanting to achieve this ideal physique, which again, whether it's looking tall, thin, having larger breasts, big butts, we always go through these like different trends, but it can have such a significant portion on your mindset and a value as your person.
Absolutely. And like, I do, like, I'm going to be honest, I do love social media because, of course, there are so many positives that come out of it. But then at the same time, it's like, it's so easy to be influenced on a daily basis. Like, I was looking in my For You page and I was just scrolling through it and I was like, oh, there's just so many bodies and I'm just so sick of seeing it. So now I've intentionally gone in and I've like saved so many cat videos because that's what I really want my feed to be. But like, you can really see how, like, if I go back, 8 years, and myself when I was so insecure and I had, all my worth and value tied into my body, if I was in that space and I sat there and I scrolled, I would have been in a negative, a shame spiral, wanting to change my food, all the things. So I can really see, like, number one, the power of mindset and what that can do, but at the same time, see how it can be such like a negative space for so many people. So with someone who does struggle with their body image, so let's go back like me 8 years ago, where I would go onto social media and I would look at the Fitspo girls, I would screenshot her abs and being like, that's what I want. But of course,
Been there, done that.
but like, of course, me being the body type is like, I like quote unquote hold my body fat on my stomach, and I've got quite small legs. So for me to actually achieve a body composition like that is actually like genetically next to impossible. So I was already setting myself up for failure.
Yeah.
So if someone is in this space who is, struggling with their body image, struggling with comparison, what are some things that you can, like some tips to help them move through this debilitating thought process, and really transition away or start improving their body image?
So in relation to body image, and I want to keep this obviously around training and nutrition, because again, like it has this beautiful connection between the two. Because if you're constantly training to punish yourself because of the way you look or the way you eat,
Yeah.
again, like we have this really distortive way of looking at it ourselves. So to go on this journey of healing your negative body image, it's again recognizing your daily behaviors. If you're someone
Yes.
who is doom scrolling, and as you mentioned, like we love social media, we run our businesses on social
Yeah.
media, but like you said, boundaries with your work, like you said, boundaries with your partner, your friends, your family, whatever, you need to set some boundaries with social media. So if
Yeah.
you're on social media and you're constantly scrolling and comparing yourself to people, how is that serving you? Because most more importantly, you need to recognize, are you feeling good while you're doing this? If not, something needs to change, because then yet again, you're just sticking into this self-sabotage pattern going, I'm going to go on social media because I'm bored, but then you're on social media and you get off it and you're like, wow, I feel like shit.
Yeah.
So it's going, okay, who's triggering you? Why is it triggering you? And then start working on that, identifying what the patterns of your thought process and feelings during that time. And then also understanding, as you mentioned before, is understanding that your certain physique will most likely be very different to someone else's physical appearance.
Yeah.
So by not spending too much time worrying about, your hip dips, which does my head in when I look across certain feeds and they're like, let's do exercise to minimize your hip dips. It's just like,
Oh,
girls, you can't do that. It's like with waist trainers as well, it's
yeah,
like
I know.
this magic idea that you're going to get a waist trainer and you're going to slim or like minimize your waist. It's like, it doesn't work that way. It's like fat reducing and so forth. So again, that's why you're listening to us right now, to be able to be educated that, certain things that people are selling to you is unreal.
And wasting your money.
100%. Well, it's like marketing 101,
Oh, mm.
it sucked me in, it sucked you in, it's probably sucked some of the listeners right now. But now that they have a better understanding of listening to us, it's recognizing, okay, what are the patterns that are coming up when I'm checking social media or when I'm talking to other people. Sometimes it could be conversations with certain people in your life, whether it's
Yeah.
co-workers, friends, that they have certain views on people's appearances or your appearance, and they're very
Yeah.
judgmental.
Yeah.
So it's going, do you want to be spending your time with certain people like that? Most likely not, because think of it as like this inner mean girl voice in your head following you all day long going, you're not skinny enough, you shouldn't be eat that, your face looks fat, your arms look flabby, like all this mean shit. Like, of course you're not going to be happy. So if the environment you're in isn't serving you, you also have to separate yourself from it, which can be so challenging, especially for people. We're wanting to be part of communities, but if your community is not serving you, then you need to find some value elsewhere with other people who are going to be there for you outside of just the way you look.
Yeah, I think back to like my conversations I used to have like in the lunchroom about the diets we were on, the calories we were eating. And like I think back to that and I'm just like, ick. But it's so true. And it's such a beautiful thing to bring up is that our environment plays a massive role in
Yeah.
terms of how we're showing up each and every day. So I love that you bring that up. I would love it if you could go talk to self-talk as well, because I know that's something that a lot of people do struggle with.
Mm.
And like you just said, it's like that inner mean girl constantly on your shoulder being like, telling you every single day of why you're not good enough and why you're fat and all of the story. So if someone has got a lot of negative self-talk, how can someone ultimately, like, of course it's like a multi-step process.
Yeah.
But what's like the first step that someone could do to really shift the inner mean girl, and ultimately like start to be free from that?
The simplest way to begin is by writing it down.
Ah,
That's how I got started. I
mhm.
remember my first therapy session.
Yeah,
I was trying to explain myself to the therapist, but I was like so embarrassed, so choked up
yeah,
that like my voice, I just couldn't express myself. And
yeah,
she's like, let's cut the session short today, but when you go home, I want you to write down how you feel about yourself. Like, what do you see in yourself? What you
yeah,
don't like, what you do like. And it was so analytical, and my brain loved it because as a type A person, I want to see, what's coming up. So I literally
yeah.
did a list of the cons, so what I don't like about myself, and then the
Mhm.
pros, what I do love about myself. And especially when you have it out on paper, you can understand yourself a little bit better because too often
Yeah,
we're so in our head
yeah.
all the freaking time. We have thoughts coming in and going all day long. Some of us have thoughts between 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And I bet you probably 90% of them are just rubbish stories that you're putting yourself down,
Yeah,
whereby rewiring this pattern, which
yeah,
mind you takes about 8 months to change. So
yeah,
your
yeah.
brain, it takes 8 months to actually start building a new way of thinking. So when people talk about manifesting and they're like, well, I didn't manifest my dream car within 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, of course not, because it takes time.
Yeah, like sometimes I'm just like, I sound like a broken record. And if my clients are listening to this is something that I'm saying them literally on a daily basis. Guys, repetition, repetition, repetition. Like this is going to take time to shift, but it's our responsibility to keep repeating, and keep reframing and keep living in our new beliefs, and letting go of those old ones. So I'm really, really glad that you said 8 months. I didn't know the exact time frame, but
It's
that,
crazy.
yeah.
And now that look back, and maybe you can relate to this as well as coaches in the industry, they tend to sell this idea within 8 weeks, you will
Oh,
achieve
don't even
your
get me
your
started on
dream
that.
body or you'll lose weight and so forth. And now that everyone has a better understanding, knowing actually to change the neurons in your brain takes more than 8 months. Eight
Yeah.
weeks is nothing. And no wonder why people go on these 8-week diets and then revert back to their old habits, because there's no enough time, there's no sustainability to build those habits, to change those repetitions, as you mentioned. And this is why when I see clients now, the minimum is to work 6 months with me, because
Um,
8 weeks is nothing. 3 months, we're literally just like at the surface.
yeah.
Within 6 months, they're already like dive deep and they're like, oh shit, like this is
Yeah.
where the good stuff happens.
Yeah, I was actually considering changing my coaching to 6 months as well. Like at the moment, it's a 12-week thing, because it's like, I totally get that. It's like, yeah, we can, change like some things like really surface level and, get your training, nutrition, all the things. But it's like, if you want like real sustainable change, it's like I look at the transformation between my, 12-week clients and my 2-year clients. And then it's like, it's just a different conversation. So I think there's so much power in that. And just long-term mentorship in itself is just, it's so different, because you can go so much deeper and your clients and you really know their blind spots that can really help them shift at a really transformative level. So yeah, I think a timing thing is a really thing that like more people need to talk about, because you're so right. It's like you see these 12-week challenges and it gets, the clients have these ideas that like, I want these results in this amount of time. I'm like, babes, like the reason why this person lost 5 kilos in 8 weeks is because they lost weight from water. Like they haven't lost body fat, because that's not enough time to even create a calorie deficit like that big to lose that much body fat. So
Yeah.
that's just a whole conversation there. Something that I really wanted to ask you, especially diving deep into your Instagram, I love it how you talk so much about confidence. And I know it's something that I used to struggle with big time, in terms of like, I would always tell myself that I would only be happy when, I would only be confident when I'm in a smaller body. And what I know to be true is when I was in my smallest body, I finally reached the goal weight. I finally reached the size 8. I looked at myself and I was like, Laura, you are the most unhappiest you have ever been in your entire life. And like, I had to learn it the hard way of it. But of course, like, you know, when people are in this headspace and they truly think that being in a smaller body is going to give them that confidence, it's hard for them to like believe that. So I would love it if you could elaborate on that a little bit more in the, you know, the conditional living, like only being happy when external circumstances change, like why that's a problem, and kind of signs that they're living in that space.
Oh, this topic excites me so much because, as you mentioned, like so many people can relate to this, especially those who are wanting to pursue their health and fitness journey, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't get started because a limiting story would be like, I don't have the funds, or I don't
Yes.
have the time, or the time
Yes.
is not right, or I don't think I'm fit enough to actually have a coach, which is so common. I get so many inquiries and like, oh,
Yeah.
I've been wanting to work with you for a year, but I didn't think I was fit enough.
Yeah.
I'm like, who told you you weren't fit enough? Like, where did you think there was this qualification where you had to be fit, quote unquote, to work with me? So there's certain ways of thinking obviously declines a way of confidence, and we continuously feel low self-worth, anxious, unattractive.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I look about confidence, and this is very like different to what is pursued on social media. And I'm sure you can relate to this, Laura, where women will tend to come online, say confidence looks good on you by the way you dress or by the way you look or the makeup, the hair. I agree with it
Yeah.
to a degree because externally, if you feel good externally, you're going to feel good internally.
Mm-hmm.
However, no one's talking about what's actually happening inside.
Yeah.
And inside, it's, as we mentioned before, it's the stories that you're telling yourself. So if you're negatively thinking about yourself and you're projecting it out there, guess what? It's going to be projected back to you. It's that common way of thinking, as you mentioned, when you were your skinniest, you were not happy. And guess what? You kept on being unhappy because that was the projecting you were telling yourself, the thoughts, the way you're talking. It was like this constant, cycle where I can relate to this as well. When I was my smallest, I wasn't happy. I was miserable.
Mm.
Though people thought I was attractive, I was fit. So externally, I was getting that
Be-
validation. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, you look so good. But like deep down inside, I was just like, something's missing. Something is missing and I don't like it. And when I started making that switch between, literally just going, like literally just raw dogging it and going, I'm not dieting anymore. Like taking that leap of faith, going, I'm sick of dieting.
Yep.
Let's just put this aside and see what happens. And having that least resistance of going, if I gain weight, I gain weight. And again, that's a story for many women who fear the weight gain because it's all these stories that you're having to be thin to be accepted. So when we're building confidence, again, it's identifying what your habits are on a daily basis. And something that I repeat to my clients constantly by building confidence, and you mentioned this already a couple of times before, is building repetition,
Yeah. Doing.
sustainable, consistent habits, because by repetition, you're going to build confidence. And what does that mean? It could mean you making your promises to yourself and not
Mm.
going to bed at the end of the day going, oh, I should have done my steps or I should have worked out, but I didn't feel like it. It's just like your feelings don't care sometimes, that we go through motions on a daily basis. You may wake up one morning and think you're feeling sick, but then towards the middle of the day, you're actually just fine. You probably just needed to walk. You probably needed to just shake your ass in the morning, get some like movement through the hips.
Get
You
out of
may
your
have,
head.
yes, get out of the head into the body. And this
Mm-hmm.
is where we're disconnected. We're so inside the head
Mm-hmm.
that we're not going internally. And again, setting up those tasks, but also keeping those promises to yourself by ticking those boxes. And again, I wasn't going to talk much about this, but like like this masculine feminine approach.
Yeah.
So when we're
Go for
thinking
it.
of masculine, it's like you doing your to-do list, your action list, setting your goals, achieving them. But then you have this feminine concept where most of us females don't dive deep into because we live in this masculine world
Yep.
of we just have to work, go, go, go. all the
Things have
shit.
to be perfect.
Exactly, where we end up getting exhausted, we get burnt out, we get really
Yeah.
bad PMS periods, we get
Yeah.
long and heavy periods. And like these are all side effects of like you not being able to balance, and that declines your confidence.
I love that you bring that up because it's something that I absolutely preach in terms of balancing out our energy in terms of the go, go, go with the rest. Because I was the same. I was the person that was waking up at 5 a.m. to go for my run. And then I would go work, 8 hours. And then I would go do a gym session. And then I would like cook dinner. And just like my day was like from 5 till 9, like jam packed. And like I had no downtime. And of course, my health suffered. Like I didn't have my period. I was irritable. I was also then thinking about food all the time. And it was just like, it's just in this unhealthy place. And I love how you talk about confidence in terms of like the physical side. Absolutely. Like I truly believe that. But like at the end of the day, it's our internal vibe. It's like who we are as a person and how we're showing up every single day. And I always talk about this. Like if you walk into a room with someone who is like, in their head, negative self-talk, shaming themselves and walk in versus someone who might not quote unquote be like the skinniest or whatever, but like they are, they're holding themselves tall. They're like, they're proud of themselves and they're walking into the room. Like who's going to be more attractive anyway? The body doesn't matter. The size of the body doesn't matter. It's got everything to do with the overall vibe. And there was a hard lesson to learn, but being able to I'm grateful for the experience because now I wouldn't have the confidence that I do now. I wouldn't be sitting here recording this podcast with you. Absolutely not. So it's just yeah, it's such a conversation to be had with so many people. I love it how you bring in the fear of weight gain in all of that. I really want to touch on that as well, because I know that's something that's holding so many women back, especially if a woman has a goal of toning up, building muscle, getting strong. So I would love to hear your opinion on how to overcome this whole fear of weight gain, eating more and fueling your body correctly, and really being able to let go of this belief.
So the fear of gaining weight was something that was so ingrained within my belief system, because I used to watch my mum put herself down when I was younger, thinking that she didn't have the ideal body. And if she thought she gained weight, which we spoke about previously, that usually the gain weight is just the excess water, doesn't necessarily mean it's, body fat.
Yep.
But I used to have this idea where I would constantly have to weigh myself and make sure that I'm not reaching a certain number on the scales, because otherwise, like, God forbid, that was like debilitating on me, where then it puts me down, not thinking I'm going to have this ideal body, which I know a lot of people can resonate. We also need to understand that the fear of gaining weight, as I mentioned, it's a conditioned response, and it could be anything from, as I mentioned, like seeing your mother or seeing a person, or being influenced by a lot of fitness and health coaches in the industry who, are preaching fat loss. However, we also need to understand that if we're taught only one way of tracking, of course, it's going to be ingrained in your mind
The
from
calorie
that.
deficit.
Yes, like, having to go on the scales, or like measure yourself. Like I've been there, you've been there. Like we all go through these certain phases. However, as you mentioned, you need to understand, like, what are your goals? Like, is it accepted right now for you to do this? Or can we like avoid this and bring in better habits into it? And also, the fear of gaining weight is subtly communicated in movies as well. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it could be in television shows as well. Right now, I've started watching Baby Reindeer on Netflix. I'm not a big like Netflix person, but I don't know if you've seen
I
this
haven't seen it, no.
series. Anyway, it's about this guy and he gets stalked by a larger woman. But the first episode, it's about him saying, it goes into the narrative of his head going, oh, like I just felt sorry for this woman because she was a larger woman. So we don't really realize that this subtle of weight gain is
Yeah,
communicated in TV. So of course
yeah,
we're going to reinforce these from them into our daily lives. So that's why we personally didn't invent this fear. So we
Yeah.
need to understand that, first of all, don't blame yourself for having
It's
this
so
fear.
real. Yeah.
Exactly. And we need to understand that, don't think for one moment that you're somehow weak or deficient because you're
Yeah.
holding this fear in your life. I've held this fear, you have as well. But once we're able to understand how to move away from it, and one of them was to go on a media diet, like
Mm.
detox from social media, or at least unfollow or mute whatever pleases you, these certain types of accounts that do trigger that way of thinking. So it's like, okay, stop watching this entertainment that makes you feel bad about yourself,
Hmm.
um, comparing yourself to others on social media, which we previously spoken about as well.
Yeah.
And also to stop focusing on pictures of people who you think you need to look like,
Yeah.
which is huge. As you mentioned before, you would take screenshots of women with six packs and, shredded abs, wanting to look like them. But it's also understanding that we can't assume that these people are perfect or living this perfect life because of how they look. So you want to
Mm.
start again spending more time with people who are more body positive, looking at
Mm.
yourself in the mirror with more kindness. This is like more of like a deeper level of work that I do with my clients, because looking in the mirror can be very triggering for people,
Yeah.
especially the background of negative body image. If they body check themselves or they're feeling really awkward and self-conscious. It's also noticing people with the same body type as you
Yeah.
and enjoying life. And I think this is something that's not seen enough of, because too often we'll look up to people like, let's say, Kim Kardashian,
Yeah.
or certain WBFF competitors
Yeah.
in bodybuilding or powerlifting. We're like, oh, I really want to be that. It's just like, you need to understand that you're a 9 to 5 full-time woman.
Yeah.
She is a full-time competitor who most likely trains at least 2 hours a day, where
Yeah.
you probably don't even get 45 minutes to do a workout, and yet you have other responsibilities to do. So again, being a little bit more open-minded about the fact that this is probably why you're fearing gaining weight, because of like these external views about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And really building that awareness in and around it, I think it's really important for everyone. And I love that you say that. It's like, yeah, we compare ourselves to these people, but then like you compare yourself to that, end outcome. But like at the same time, you're not comparing yourself to like what you're doing every single day to that person. So I'm
Yeah.
like, start comparing yourself to someone who does everything that you do. And all of a sudden, you probably realize that you're actually doing a fucking good job.
100%. So it's catching yourself in the moment. And sometimes when I speak about this to people, they're like, yeah, like it's easy for you. You're like very self-aware of it. I'm like, yeah, but like
I
I've
wasn't.
trained myself to do this. I wasn't born with this way of thinking. So I can empathize with you right now to realize that
Yeah.
your desire to lose weight is there for a reason, but is it your preference? Like, is it actually something that you'd really like? Or is it something that you've been told by external world that you should
Should. You'll be happier.
diet? Again,
Mm.
exactly. So it's like choosing to notice the moments that you're getting stuck in this like fear of weight gain, and catching yourself in the moment. Like, notice the fear, witness it. Like, where is it coming up in your body? How are
Yeah.
you feeling? Yeah, exactly. And then asking yourself, like, is this an actual life or death threatening experience? Are you, is your life like really on the line right now just because you're weighing a kilo heavier? Most likely not. Again, we have this negative bias idea in our head, but by being able to calm yourself down and
Yeah.
relax yourself back to consciousness,
Yeah.
then you're able to like regulate your nervous system a little bit more, and then work through it as an ongoing practice.
Oh, yes, that's so beautiful. Being able to regulate your nervous system again. Like when I learned how to do that was really game changing for me, because it was like, when I had so much of my worth and value tied up into my body, it's like my body image got triggered like every single day, like pair of shorts, body checked, all of the things. And it would just send me literally into a spiral for like 3 days. So I would love it if you could share some ways that people could regulate their nervous system when their body image does get triggered.
So there's various ways of doing this. And I know like the most common one that we're seeing these days on socials is like breath work and meditation. And again, like these are all things that I practice myself.
Yeah.
I also love reminding my clients to tap into what they enjoy doing.
Yeah.
What are some hobbies that you love doing that you haven't done in a while that just brings you so much joy? And funnily enough, it has nothing to do with breath work. It has nothing to do with meditation. Yet those two concepts are so beneficial because again, it brings you into this like consciousness level of
Yeah.
knowing how to tune into your body. But
Yeah.
some of my clients enjoy dancing. Some of
Yeah.
them enjoy sewing or painting or anything that just makes them feel calm, safe, and regulated.
Mm.
So there's no like, that one method that's,
Complete.
yeah, exactly. Like last night, I felt so on edge after like a really long day at work. And I was just like,
Mm.
I just need a bath.
Oh, love that.
Just need a bath, just to chill,
Yeah.
drink my tea, go to bed. It could be as simple as that. It could, someone who doesn't have a bath, it could be as simply as like you just playing some relaxing music, calming the nervous system down, regulating it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, like I struggle with the breathing and the meditation side of things because like you can probably relate to this because my mind was so busy that I really couldn't settle it down. And I know there's a few listeners that probably can relate to that as well. And so like my favorite thing, the first thing that I started to do was dancing. Like for me, that was just like everything, like putting on some like high vibe music. I had my high vibe music playlist. And just being able to get out of the head and into the body can be so, so helpful in so many ways, like nervous system regulation, decreasing our cortisol levels, all the things. So it's such an important practice to, to learn how to do basically, because at the end of the day, like it is a skill. And I love how you said that, like, I wasn't always like this. Like I actually had to, take responsibility and learn how to integrate these practices on a regular basis, because if we didn't, like we would still be back to where we were 10, 20 years ago. So I think that's really important. So this has been such an amazing conversation. I've got one more question for you.
Fire away.
Your confidence checklist. I love it how that's a common theme on your Instagram. You're always sharing it. So I know we touched earlier on confidence, but I would love it if you could just share some tangible tips on your confidence checklist in terms of how to develop a confident mindset, and the best ways to build that inner self-confidence.
So there's three parts of this. There is the body, mind, and soul concept for the checklist. Now, to be honest, whatever I put on Instagram is probably like the 1% of
I
my
know. Can relate.
to be on my list it's long. It's very, very long. And sometimes I contemplate whether to share it or not. But then I know a lot of people look at it and be like, whoa, like you do that all the time. So it's like, no, like I pick and choose what comes. So when we're focusing on the body side of things, I love looking at it more of a holistic way of our lifestyle habits. So your nutrition aspect, your exercise aspect, it could be your environmental habits. So when we're looking at nutrition, is your food serving you or does it make you feel like shit?
Yeah.
Do you have a good balance of eating processed foods and whole foods? Because again,
Yep.
this whole way of like avoiding processed foods, like, yeah, cool. Like that's ideal if you were a caveman, but you're
Yeah.
not. And every so often you will want to have a donut or a Tim Tam, but be consciously aware that those high palatable foods may make you feel a little bit
Shitty.
shit. Yes. The excess, you know, foods, sugars, preservatives, whatever it is. So it's understand like what foods are beneficial for you in terms of training, as you mentioned, like the movement side of things, where it's like a hot girl dance or
Yeah.
training at the gym or going for a walk, whatever it is. And then the environment, something that is not looked at too often is your home environment. And then you could look at the outside. So the home environment, it could be like, are you drinking filtered water? This is something that's been spoken about over the last few months to people all around Australia, especially people in Melbourne right now are realizing tap water is not so beneficial in terms of like for your inside. So filtered water, Are there any certain toxins within your household that is eliminating you from having a confident mindset? So mold is a big one. If we're exposed to mold, that can affect your way of thinking. It can be like brain fog. It can be like aches and in your joints, so forth. It could be, I'm just looking at my house right now, like incense plants. Oh my God, you can
Yeah.
for those who are watching, I love plants,
Yeah.
greenery, fresh air, daylight, sunlight. And when we're looking at the mindset checklist, as we
Mhm.
mentioned before, how to regulate your mindset, looking at meditation, breath work, journaling,
Yeah.
whether it's talk therapy or coaching with a professional. And the soul one is probably like one of my favorite checklists.
Yeah.
Is doing whatever feels good for your soul. So
Love that.
again, I don't want to be canceled here, but like self-pleasure,
For it.
something it's not spoken openly enough about. And when we do, certain women feel uncomfortable, they cringe and like, oh, how could you? It's like, girl, like if you're not pleasuring yourself, if you're not enjoying your own company, how are you going to enjoy other people's company or your partner's company or the partners, whoever you're, involved with?
Absolutely.
So dancing is a big one. Like it literally lights up my soul. Just
Yeah.
whether it's like, a sexy dance or like a super dance or just like shaking the body, it could mean literally anything, like a dip in the beach or, catching up with a friend, having a really good discussion, like what we're doing right now, like
Yeah.
anything like that. And to finalize, I think people overlook this or they tend to feel overwhelmed because they're like, oh, there's so many options, there's so many
Yep.
things. It's like, just pick and choose. Just
Yep.
go 3 a day or one thing a day just to make yourself a little bit happy. And then eventually within a year's time, you'll have over 300 that you can play with. Like, how fucking cool is that?
Yeah, and I love that in terms of like starting small and just like really leaning into what makes you feel good and like really lights you up instead of being like, yeah, I like right or wrong. Cause I know a lot of people like, I've got to do the right thing and I've got to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. Let's get rid of the structure, allow yourself to flow a little bit. And sometimes it sounds like, not great advice because it's just like, yeah, just learn how to like, really lean into your intuition and trust what you feel and what really feels good for you, because that is like at the end of the day, that is a skill to being able to actually listen and flow and to be able to trust that. And yeah, and again, it's that all or nothing thinking, coming back to that start of the conversation. And it's just allowing ourselves to be in the moment and trust what makes us feel good and really lights us up. So I think that's a really beautiful way to end this amazing conversation. So Sigi, thank you so much for coming on. I've really appreciated this. If people want to learn more about you, they want to check out your confidence checklist, where are they going to find you?
You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram tagline is just my name, Sig Fisher. I'm also on Tiki
Yes,
Talk
the
or
Tiki Talks.
TikTok. It's the old the old generation in me is naming that. I'm not very active in there, so you'll probably find me more on Instagram. But other than that, yeah. Or if you're in Melbourne and you want to say hi to me in person, please come over, say hi. I love it.
I love that so much. And is there anything else that you want to add to this conversation to finish it off?
I would definitely re-listen or re-watch this and take little bits from this and see what you can start implementing into your day-to-day life. Because as Laura mentioned, too often we'll be like, well, if it's not a perfect list of X, Y, and Z, I'm just not going to do it anything. So like
Yeah.
get out of your analytical mind, go into your body and be like, cool, what is serving me right now and what's going to benefit me to become more confident the next day.
Amazing summary. Absolutely. So thank you again.
You're welcome, babe.
So that is a wrap of the beautiful conversation. If you guys wanted to get in touch with Sigi, you know where to find her on Instagram. Thank you for being here. You know I appreciate you. If you haven't left me a review yet and you're loving the episodes, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next episode. The number one challenge that all my clients face before we start working together is a lack of clarity on how much and what to eat to lose weight. Often they are making two huge mistakes: constantly trying to skip meals or eat under 1600 calories. Secondly, only allowing themselves bad foods like chocolate on the weekend, but end up binging, all to tell themselves they're going to start again on Monday. If you feel like you have tried every diet under the sun and still can't figure out what to eat to achieve your weight loss goals, take my free 2-minute quiz. You can find the link in the show notes down below, and it will help you figure out exactly what you're doing wrong with your nutrition and exercise, and exactly what to do to fix it so that you can finally be confident in your body and achieve your weight loss goals.